Hi, I'm Caroline Mitchell, Canine Behaviourist at Good Doggy. So if you've been working on your dog's behaviour for a while, you will have noticed that your dog has good days and bad days. Well, and hopefully you will have noticed that, because this is a good thing. This is normal. But for some people, it can be difficult to get your head around. We've been conditioned really to think of dogs in a kind of a black and white way. They are aggressive, they're not aggressive. They are reactive, they're not reactive. They do or they don't. They win, lose. So when we think about them kind of in this kind of way, we come away from feeling, think of them as a sort of a scale. You can't be, a human is not aggressive or not aggressive. Aggression is a reaction to a situation. When dogs are reactive, they're not reactive all of the time. It takes something to trigger them to be reactive. If they have done something or not done something, that can be very situational too. And the way that they respond to things, whether they will perform a cue or not perform a cue at the time you've asked them, really comes down a lot to how they're feeling at the time. And if we allow dogs then to have emotions and feelings, then you'll start to see that they will also, just like us, have good days and bad days. So when a dog is trying to change their behavior, it's like trying to give up a habit. So this would be like for us, if you have a habit of, twiddling your hair or biting your nails, or something even more like smoking or chocolate addiction, maybe, when you try to give these things up, it's not easy. The thing is that we all know how to not do these things. So let's talk about like nail biting as an example. If you bite your nails a lot of the time, sometimes you'll be doing it, you won't even be realizing it. But you do know how to not bite your nails. At the moment, you're probably thinking about it, but you weren't 5 minutes ago. There are times in the day when you are not biting your nails, so you know how to not do it. But emotions, situations, things around you, people talking about nail biting, all of that kind of stuff has now changed the way that you're feeling and has made you maybe more or less likely to bite your nails. Smokers don't smoke 24 hours a day. There are periods of time between cigarettes when they are not smoking, so they know how to not smoke. That's not the problem. The problem is that all of these habits we're talking about serve a purpose, and they serve a purpose for us emotionally. So as our emotions are changing throughout the day, then so will our resistance to certain types of habits, our ability to resist them, our need to resist them. All of this is going to change. So when you're starting to give up a habit, sometimes you have to focus really quite hard and concentrate and force yourself to not do something. As I say, you know how to not smoke, but there will become times in the day when your emotions will change, the situation changes, and you'll suddenly start to feel a need to smoke. And in the very early days, you're going to have to resist that pretty hard. You have to make a very conscious decision to say, no, I'm not going to do that this time. And that will ease over time. But this is how your dog is feeling whenever we try to change a habit that has served them well. If they are barking at another dog, there's a good reason for that. That solves an emotional problem for them. That fixes a need for them. If they need to feel safe, barking at another dog maybe makes them feel safe. So when we first start to work with them, they have to work very, very hard to resist the urge to do that. So this is kind of how habit changing and behavior changing works. So we can see that there really isn't any kind of black and white in these very early stages. If you're trying to resist chocolate, maybe you've managed a whole week and you've done really, really well, but you have a bad day, you're feeling emotional, things have happened, and you lose that resistance. You just run out of willpower, you can't hold back anymore, and you make a mistake. Does that now mean that you're addicted to chocolate again? Or did you just have a bad day? Did you just go off the hills a little bit? Did you just satisfy a need that was there at the time? When we're working with our dogs and this happens, we start to think that things aren't working. We blame them. We think that they're at fault. The behavior they've been managing all week now suddenly isn't working anymore. Our training isn't working anymore. When we start to look at our dogs in this kind of dimension, this they either are or they aren't. They either can or they can't. Then we stop thinking about them as an individual. So we start talking about them as the dog rather than as Barney. Barney has his own needs. Barney likes cuddles. He likes carrot treats, you know, and that's different from Sally. Sally likes cheese, and Sally likes to curl up next to her favorite cuddly toy, you know. Every dog is really different, and they all have their own needs, their own likes, and their own kind of wants. So thinking about them in terms of, you know, can or can't, leads us to kind of categorize them back to being just dogs again. We lose that kind of individuality of our dogs. We lose their needs and their personalities and their emotions, and we start to think of them as it, or the dog, the animal. And we start to wonder then why some dogs can do this and some dogs can't. You know, why can't my dog do the same thing that that person's dog can do? Well, your dog's really different. They've had loads of different experiences in their lives. They are a different age. They'll have different preferences, you know. As I say, Sally likes cheese. Max likes twizzle sticks, you know. They're just all different. Some of them will watch the TV, some won't. Some of them like to sit on a lap, some like to sit beside. Every dog kind of has their own feelings and their own needs and their own wants and their own desires. But when we start to take all that away and think of the can or can't, then we start to fall into a kind of a dangerous place where we start to look now towards other kind of methods that can give us that black and white answer. This then leads us to methods that might be described more aversive. So this encourages us to look at compliance. It focuses on things they can't do. It encourages us to use phrases like, he did it yesterday, he could do it last week, why can't he do it now? And it stops us thinking about them as this kind of emotional being that is in a habit forming, habit breaking and forming phase. We need to think about them more as emotional beings, and we can think about their needs and desires. We know that they get overwhelmed. We know that they can get distracted, you know. They're not machines that just can do and can't do. And actually, while we're talking about overwhelm, have a look at my video that I made about spoon theory, which talks about how dogs only have a certain amount of resources available to them when it comes to their sort of emotional well-being, what they can do. It's really interesting discussion. Spoon theory has been used in mental health and chronic disease for a long time. And I feel like there's lots that we can take from that, you know, to help us understand our dogs. So check that video out. But when we think about dogs having their own goals, and their goals will often take priority. So if you ever look at Maslow's pyramid, you'll see that at the very bottom of the pyramid, these are all of the important needs. These are the survival needs. These are primal needs. A dog can't go without these things. And at the bottom of the pyramid is sex, food, security. And when those types of needs are threatened, that triggers extreme anxiety or overexcitement, things like that. So the bottom layer of the pyramid, when those needs get threatened, those needs will become much more important than ours. If your dog is worried about food availability, or maybe he's feeling really hungry, perhaps he's not well actually, and he's not absorbing the nutrients from his food properly, then on the inside, he's going to be really worried about food. He's not feeling right. He's not feeling well fed. So that is going to override anything you're trying to do with them. It doesn't matter if you're trying to do a recall with them, if you're trying to get him to walk past something that he's normally afraid of, you know, that kind of thing is going to override whatever we're trying to do. So that becomes way more important. This is another good reason why we need to look at our dogs more as these kind of emotional beings and look at all of the needs first. I talk about needs quite a lot because when needs prioritize for a dog, then it means that we're not going to get very much from them. So when somebody tells you you should take your dog to a vet because they've suddenly started a new behavior problem, this isn't exactly the reason why, because if there's a need on the inside, then your dog's not going to be focusing on what you're trying to teach them. And all of a sudden now your training stopped working. And this is not because the dog has suddenly become non-compliant or has suddenly become naughty, or, you know, has forgotten how to do it, or maybe the training wasn't working. It's just that a different need has become more important. The sex need is also a really important one to consider if you have a dog that's not neutered, because again, that's right at the bottom of the pyramid. This is the primal need. So it's going to override whatever you're trying to do with him. And if he's thinking about ladies, if he can smell bitches in heat nearby, then that's exactly where his mind is going to be. Again, he hasn't just suddenly become naughty. The training has not stopped working. It's just that a need has come and it has trumped what you're trying to do. So when we think about dogs, we can't think about they can or can't do unless. The exception to all of this rule is unless aversion methods are being used. And the reason why an aversive method will work pretty much all of the time is because it relies on the threat of pain and fear in order to work. And there isn't much in terms of Maslow's pyramid of needs that is going to override that. Fearing pain, avoiding fear, avoiding threat, those things are also very, very primal and very important. So when a dog is, for example, maybe given an electric collar and they're looking at something they shouldn't be looking at, maybe they're looking at a sheep, maybe they're barking, and all of a sudden the shock collar goes off. They feel this vibration. Maybe there's a little stimulation there from like a trigger from the electricity, whatever it is. All of a sudden, they are now in a position where they need to avoid pain. They're in a state of fear, and that has now overridden whatever it was that they were trying to do. And you couldn't do that with a treat, because a dog is not going to stop being distracted in their environment. They're barking for a reason. If they're barking because they are trying to make themselves feel safe from another dog, feeling pain at that exact moment is going to be far more important to avoid than the dog that's not too close to them at that stage. But a treat's not going to do that. Now, this is not a good thing. It's not a good thing to use pain and fear to try and change a dog's behavior. If we accept that dogs have good days and bad days and we work through them, we can do this in a really nice, positive way. But using pain and fear has its own consequences. Once you start using those kind of methods with a dog, then it starts to erode their resilience, which will make them more susceptible to anxiety. And maybe not in that situation, but maybe in others. It's possible that you could fix a problem where a dog is afraid of something in their environment, but actually you end up with a separation anxiety problem that just suddenly just grows in the background, and now they're not coping in a different situation. The resilience and their confidence will get worn away. When you use these kinds of methods, the dog becomes less connected to his family, and he becomes less interested in trying to please them, in trying to learn new things. It's really just the threat of the pain that's making him do things. And if you imagine in a situation yourself where you're trying to learn a new behavior, imagine that person who's twiddling their hair. Every time they try to do it, they get their hand smacked away. It'll achieve good results in the end in terms of the hair twizzling, but the person that's slapping the hand away and the person that was hair twizzling, their relationship will have taken a big hit. So it does achieve the results you want to achieve, but only because it reprioritizes everything that's going on for the dog. And that's just really not a good thing. I would much rather take a bad day than resort to kind of those sorts of methods. But that's how the different kind of thoughts can divert you to different kinds of methods. When you think of this dog as a being that has their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own desires, their own needs, and then you prioritize that, you work with that, you work around that, then you're going to use lots of positive methods. You're going to consider the dog in all of their training. You're going to advocate for them. Or you can go the other way, where you think that this is a situation where the dog is either one thing or another. They're either good or bad. They either did it or they didn't do it. And then you end up going down this kind of aversive method, this aversive path towards, how do we make this dog stop doing that, rather than how do we encourage them to do something better. So what do we do instead? So we support their needs, we support their emotions, we consider how they are, we consider how do we make things easier for them, we simplify things and then we build up the difficulty of stuff, you know. So if you're trying to get your dog to walk past another dog that they're afraid of, then you start at a distance, you know. You find a distance that they're comfortable at, you find a way to reward that and build their confidence up. And they see that other dog in the distance and they're getting loads of rewards and their confidence is growing, their trust in you is growing, and they will then allow you to move them closer and closer to the other dog. If you're having a really bad day, just stop, go home and start again tomorrow. Think about what made your day bad. What made it bad for your dog? Was he tired? Had he already had a walk that day? Had you had a visitor around that morning? Have you had lots of parcels delivered? Did he skip breakfast? You know, what kind of things actually contributed to his bad day? Could you have avoided any of those? Tomorrow is always another day though. Start fresh, start positive, and you know, you will get there in the end. And you'll get there with your relationship intact with your dog. His resilience and his confidence will be higher than ever before. His trust in you will be absolutely rock solid. And you'll come through this with a really great relationship. And you're less likely to trigger other problems. And you'll achieve your results. Take care for now. Bye-bye.